So amidst all of the craziness that's going on in the world right now, we decided to do a photo review of your images, and we put it out last week, and we got a lot of responses.
Yeah, so for the past week, you've been sharing your images on us with Instagrams with the hashtag DIMMotion, and we put a whole bunch of them together, and we're here to talk about them.
So many of the images we're going to show you were shot in the Disney parks because that's primarily what we're known for as photographers, and our Instagram page focuses on that. And we know a lot of photographers in that world, in the Disney photography world. But we also got a lot of submissions that weren't from the Disney parks.
Right, so if we don't get to your photograph, if you sent one to us and we don't get to it, we apologize. We got a lot of photographs, a lot of things to go through. We're going to do something like this again in the future, so look out for that. If you've sent one in and we talked about it, or we didn't and you want to get one in next time, definitely do it in again in the future.
So the way we're going to do this is we have the images on our phone on Instagram. And, we probably should have thought this through a little bit better, but Instagram is not formatted well for a YouTube video. It's vertical on your phone, and you can't really download the images. We probably should have done this on Facebook, where it's a little bit different. But what we're going to do is we took screenshots of the phone of the images that you guys sent in, and we're going to drop them in over our talking about them.
Right. So let's get started.
Okay, so the first image we're going to talk about is from Paul Sumner, and he's one of our followers here on YouTube. And he submitted this really cool photo of the double-decker buses in England, I'm assuming.
Yeah, he says they're Christmas lights. Images like this, crowded cities, busy streets. It's cool to be able to focus on something and eliminate a lot of the clutter and background and everything. And basically what he did here was got low, got this nice cobblestone street, and was able to take a long exposure and get the buses, which is really iconic buses in London, get them kind of blurring by on the sides.
Right, but it's not a super long exposure. It's 1.6 seconds. So you don't, if you let it go too long, you lose any definition in what's moving, and you have no idea what it's an image of. So he did it just long enough to, still that you can tell what it is, that it's a bus, but he blurred it so you can actually feel the motion that's going on.
Right, so very nice image. Good job.
Yeah.
So this next one is from one of our Disney friends, Ernie, who we talk to online a lot. This is a great photograph. I love stuff like this. You don't see a lot of daytime long exposure shots, and this is a great example.
Yeah, this is, during the middle of the day, you need to use an ND filter with a shot like this. And you have something stationary in the image. In this case, it's the attraction Spaceship Earth down in Walt Disney World. And the exposure is long enough that the actual clouds are what are showing the movement there. And if you didn't use a neutral density filter in this situation, what would happen is the entire image would be blown out because you have your shutter open for so long. So this is something that we talk about a lot in our videos is neutral density filters, and Ernie nailed it with this shot.
Yeah, 10-strap neutral density filter. It was perfect for this. If you're looking to take a shot like this, you need a partly cloudy sky and a windy day. Those are the perfect conditions where those clouds are moving fast. Any stationary object with clouds like that moving behind it looks really nice.
Very cool shot, Ernie. So this next one is from Jason White, and he's another one of the great Disney photographers that post their stuff on Instagram. And there's a couple of things going on in this image, and there's a few different things. The angle. He has a separate focal point, and then there's some movement going on in the background.
Yeah, so he went with the ultra-wide angle, and he put this anvil with the sword in the foreground and got the movement in the background. That's one of the things about getting shots with movement in it and motion in it, is to have those stationary objects in there. To kind of offset the motion, you have the stationary objects, and it's just a fantastic composition.
So anytime you have something that's spinning or moving, you can create these type of images. And an image like this needs to be shot on a tripod, so you always want to make sure you have a tripod with you or some way to stabilize your camera. You could put your camera on top of something, put it on the ground, but if you have something moving and you need to keep your shutter open for longer than a second, not even a second,
yeah,
sometimes.
Like a quarter of a second. Anything longer than that, you're going to need a tripod.
Yeah, so cool shot, Jason. So this one is from our friend Peter, and Peter is in Australia, and he contacted us about some Lightroom questions, and we got to talking, and what he said was maybe it would be a good idea if we actually talked about some images that you guys submitted. So it was really his idea, this video. So thanks for that, Peter. And then he sent in these really cool set of images.
Yeah, these are very, very unique. When I first saw these, I'm like, what are they even? And at the end, he showed us an example of how he set this up. He didn't really show us exactly how he did it. Maybe it's a proprietary secret. I don't know.
Like
but
a
he showed us
magician.
what the setup was. And sometimes, the simplest thing, if you want to try to get creative with light and movement and things like that, sometimes the simplest setup with some glass and some globes, water maybe, and lights and things like that, you can create some really unique images.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure how he did this. Obviously, there's some sort of spinning light in these images. And the last image where he shows his setup does not let you figure it out either. So I'm very curious. So Peter, if you want to put what you actually did in the comments of this video, I think we'd all love to know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, so here's a Disney shot from Darren, our friend Darren, and this is one of the things that we love to shoot over and over again. Spinning rides like this, Dumbo in particular, because it's so iconic. It's a kind of a ride that if you get it just right, it's a lot of trial and error, but getting it just right, you can get some really fantastic images. So basically a shot like this, you have to prop the camera on something stationary, which happens to be the side of the Dumbo that you're sitting in most cases. This was shot, this was a 2-second exposure, so shots like this you really need between 1 and 2 seconds long to get enough motion, but not too long where you're actually, the Dumbo that you're sitting in is in motion all the time too, going up and down and kind of bouncing around. So you don't want a really long exposure where you're going to get that bounce, but just long enough where you're going to see the motion blur and to be able to freeze the other elephants that are flying around, kind of freeze those in place.
Yeah, this is something that is really cool because you're not capturing the motion of something spinning in front of you. You are actually spinning, and the world is what's showing movement. So the stationary part of the image is actually, what's being blurred because you're moving. And this is it's like a flip of what most people do where they set their tripod down and capture something that's spinning. This is the opposite. You're inside the spin and capturing the world around it spinning. So it's a very cool shot.
Yeah, it kind of almost makes you feel like you're on the ride. You can feel yourself spinning around when you look at this image.
Yeah, so very cool and well done. So this next image is the opposite of what we were just talking about. This is something that was spinning, but this is not a very long exposure. It's 1/25th of a second, but it's just slow enough to catch this wind turbine spinning. So if you wanted to show motion, but not too much, just a little bit, a shot like this is a really cool shot.
Yeah, a longer exposure, like a second even probably, is going to get those blades spinning where they're almost going to be invisible. You're not going to see it. So just a little bit of motion in something like this is enough to show the motion and really, kind of capture the image the way you want. And that was from Colin Knock. He took this along a walk one day.
Yeah, you can get great photography anywhere.
Right, thanks.
Okay, so this one's along the same lines. It's not a very long exposure. It's a half a second, and it's long enough to just show a little bit of motion, but you can still see what's going on in the image.
Yeah, this is from Todd Kemp. He caught this one in Disneyland. Any kind of amusement park rides and stuff like this one, where things are spinning around and stuff. A shorter long exposure, like a half second long or something, is really just enough to capture the motion. Kind of put the blur in there that you want, capture the motion, and it kind of gives you the feeling of excitement and fun that you have at an amusement park like this.
Yeah, no, and any kind of carnival rides or amusement parks or anything, you're always going to have something that moves like this. So it's a great place to practice this kind of photography. Ideally, you want a tripod, but for a short exposure like this, you probably could handhold it.
Yeah, so great shot, Todd. Thanks. Okay, this one is from Disney Photo Junkie, and I really love this shot for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot going on in this, and it's so obviously shot on a tripod because it's a 15-second exposure. It's shot during the day, so he's using a net neutral density filter. But then he went the extra mile, and in his editing, he removed a lot of color.
Right, so there's just that little streak of color on the monorail, that little bit of blue that you see. And when you're shooting the monorail, it's one of the most fun things probably to shoot in Epcot, is when that monorail is coming, you pull out your camera, you try to shoot. And capturing it just right is hard sometimes because it streaks through the image. You can't really always see it when you take a long exposure. It sometimes disappears almost entirely. So to get a good shot of it is really good, and the way that he left in that little bit of color in there is really great. It was shot, I like the ingenuity that was used here. I like the framing. I happen to love that this metal pole that's in the bottom right-hand corner just, I think, frames this image perfectly. And the fact that it was shot on a Gorilla Pod, on a trash can, I think just completes the deal. It makes this a really fun photograph for me.
Yeah, and the monorail would be enough, but he's also got the waterfall next to it, which is also showing movement. So this was a really great example of what we were going for when we said you wanted to show motion. And by the way, I'm a fan of selective color. I know it's like a big no-no in photography, but sometimes it just works perfectly, and I think this is one of those instances where it was just perfectly done.
Yeah, so really great shot. Thanks for sharing this one.
Okay, this next one is a cool image, and this is our first panning shot. And a panning shot is just, it's something that takes a lot of trial and error. This one's from Michael Brown, and I think he nailed this image of an old Mustang on a it looks like some sort of race course or something like that, some motorsports type thing.
Yeah, panning shots are very hard to get. I mean, I've wasted countless
Hundreds of
hours
images.
probably just standing in one spot and rotating my body back and forth trying to get panning shots. They're very hard to get right.
Right.
You basically want to, as this happens to be a car. So if you're shooting a car on a panning shot, you want to basically follow the car with the camera while you're shooting a relatively slow exposure. So this,
Right. So when you say a panning shot,
Right.
what exactly are you meaning? So if you're holding the camera up to your eye,
Right.
the car is coming through,
Right.
and you're gonna actually try to move at the same speed
Right.
as the car while the shutter's open. So the world behind the car
Right.
blurs and the car stays sharp. It's very hard to do.
Right. So the shutter speed has to be long enough, and he said in this it was between 1/20th and 1/40th of a second. The shutter speed has to be long enough to be able to freeze the car itself as you're trying to maintain the same exact speed as it, but slow enough to blur the world behind it as it goes by.
Yeah, so this was really well done. And the reason why you want to do this, if he used a fast shutter speed, it's going to look like a car parked on a racetrack.
Right.
So, because it's going to freeze the motion. But because you use that slower shutter speed and you get the motion behind him, plus you'll have the wheels spinning, it's a very cool technique. It takes practice. But when you get a shot like this, it's so worth it because you're like, okay, I nailed it. It's worth the effort.
Yeah, hard to do, but when you do it right, it looks really great. So
Yeah,
great
so
job, thanks.
awesome.
All right, this is from our friend Chaz from Disney ImageWorks, and I don't know what I can say about this other than it's just an explosion of fireworks in the sky.
Yeah, and Disney's perfect for this.
Yeah.
And practicing long exposures in Walt Disney World, one of the things we get a lot of questions on is how do you shoot really good fireworks images? And this is a good example of it. You have to have your shutter open long enough to catch the firework when it leaves the ground, all the way up in the air, explodes, and then kind of fizzles out. So you need long exposures, you have to have your timing right, and your settings have to be right. So typically shots like this are at ISO 100, maybe, I don't know, between 5 and 10 seconds, sometimes longer. A shot like this where there's so much fireworks going on, I'm thinking it's a longer exposure than
Right.
that. And you want your aperture somewhere between like f8 and f15,
Yep.
somewhere around there.
Yep. Yeah, fireworks are a lot of fun. Once you know the basics, tripod, cable release, you know what your aperture is supposed to be, you know where your ISO is supposed to be, and then like Bill just said, it's timing the bursts, making sure that you're not cutting them off, halfway through, you get the whole burst, timing the show. Once you know that, once you have it down, fireworks can be really easy to do, but they're always fun. No matter how many times we've shot fireworks, it's always thrilling to
Right.
get those shots.
And once you get them and you're good at getting them, then it becomes composition. And if you look at this shot, he's filled the entire frame with the fireworks, which is a totally different look than you're usually seeing, where the fireworks will be a part of the sky, but they'll be black around it. This, he decided, I'm just filling the whole frame with everything.
Right.
And it's cool and it's different. So nice job.
Thanks.
Okay, so this one, we got a guest submission from Eric's daughter, Olivia. So I'm assuming you were here during this shot, right?
I was standing right next to her.
Okay.
So we had some extra time. We were in Disneyland, had some extra time during the afternoon, and we went out with a tripod and a 10-stop neutral density filter and just ran around the park shooting long daytime exposures, which was a ton of fun. So we found anything that was in motion, rides, the Ferris wheel in this example, anything like that you're shooting during the daytime. It takes on a really unique look when something's moving like that, but it's not a nighttime or with lights and things like that. Daytime long exposures look really cool. I had a lot of fun teaching my daughter how to do it. She had a lot of fun doing it. Stuff like this just is a lot of fun.
Right, so if a shot like this, you could have possible movement in the sky, the actual Ferris wheel, and the water will actually smooth out. So there's a lot of elements here that can be affected by the long exposure. So this was a great place for her to practice, I would imagine.
So good job, Olivia. Thanks.
Yeah, nice job. So this shot's by Nick Foster, and this is a way that you can use long exposures to make maybe an image that wouldn't be as interesting a little more interesting. If you hold your shutter open for just a split second or maybe a few seconds, or depending on the situation, you can actually get some ghosting going on in the people.
Right, so it looks like he used a flash in this image and probably had a long exposure of maybe, 1/5 of a second or a quarter of a second or something like that, which is enough time to have the image blurred. But when you fire a flash during a shot like that, it actually freezes part of it in time. So you kind of see the people in this are kind of frozen in place, but then you see the ghosting on either side of them as they
Yeah.
move around. So that's basically how you do something like that, with a long exposure and just a little burst of flash during it.
Yeah, so it's a cool way to get a unique shot in a kind of busy, crowded situation that he had going
especially
on.
if you're shooting like people dancing or something like that, is really great for shots like that.
Yeah, it adds a lot of blur to everything. It's cool.
So thanks for sharing this one. Good job.
This next one is from our friend Matt. He's a fellow New York photographer. He does a lot of shooting up here in New York, around the city, and he also shoots a lot of stuff down in Disney. But this is actually from one of our favorite areas of New York to shoot, down in Dumbo in Brooklyn, right under the Brooklyn Bridge there, near the Manhattan Bridge, Brooklyn Bridge area. And it's a very cool image of some light trails on the city streets.
Yeah, so a long exposure like this, like I said, the very first image that we talked about in this with the buses, where you have a really cool cityscape, a nice scene, and you're going to add a really cool element to it with the cars going by. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Like the other one had those iconic buses. This is probably just an ordinary car driving by, or a few cars driving by. But when you put those light streaks in there and you combine all the other elements into it, it really makes a really nice composition.
Right. Sometimes if you're just taking a shot of a city street, there might just be people standing around. You might freeze a car in action that's kind of going through your shot. This kind of brings the image to the next level. So when you can add motion into an image like this, it kind of makes it look a little more unique, and it's got something visually interesting going through it.
So really nice image, great composition. Thanks, Matt. So this is from Doug, aka Disney Doug. This is an example of how you can basically take a crowded scene with a lot of people in it and basically make them disappear.
Right.
This shot is from Disney World's Tomorrowland at night, and there's never a time when it's not crowded. There's always people walking around, walking through a scene like this. He didn't give us the exposure on this, but it had to be probably 10 seconds plus.
Oh, I bet you it's more than that.
Yeah, I'm sure
I bet
it's more
you
than
a
that.
long exposure. Yeah.
So basically what will happen is, when you have a long exposure like that, you're getting a very, very dark image. So you need to expose it for a long time. And the things that are stationary, like the lights in the buildings that don't move, takes those things a long time to expose on the sensor. So those things aren't moving. So those are actually recorded by the sensor. But anything that's moving through the image doesn't have enough time to record. It's too dark. There's not enough light on it. There's no time to get it. So any people or anything that are moving through the image are just going to disappear. They're not going to be there at all. So you can take a crowded space and make it look empty.
Right, and this is something we've done over the years in a lot of our images. But if there is a huge crowd, like if you're in a place that's super packed, what it's going to do is just going to kind of smear it all together. But if it's a sparse crowd and there's people around, you can actually make it look like there's nobody there. And you could use this in any kind of situation. The cityscapes, you can do it during the daytime with a neutral density filter. So if you want to try to get a couple of stragglers out of your image, you can just do a really long exposure, and as long as they're moving, they won't show up in the image.
Yeah, people ask us a lot, how do you get shots of the parks empty at night? And this is one of the ways that you do it.
Yeah, it's not actually empty.
Yeah, as long as those people keep moving. When they stop and they stand and they start talking to someone, you got to start
Then they
over
show
again.
up like a ghost.
Yeah, you got to try over again. But it's a lot of fun to try, and that's how you do it. Great
All right.
shot.
Okay, this one is from Doug Everling Photography, and Doug did something really cool here. This is a fun, I don't know if you've ever seen an image like this before, but this is actually steel wool. And I think now I've never done this. This is kind of like light painting in a way, but I think you light it on fire if I'm not.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that's what you do, and then you spin it, and the sparks fly off it. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that, but whatever he did, it makes a really cool image. And actually, I love how these little, pieces of it are dropping into the scene, especially that one right up in the front.
Yeah, that one
there.
that lands right in the foreground there just makes the shot. It's really, really cool.
This
This
is
is a great example of how you can just create your own images.
Yeah, get creative with this stuff, and it's a fun, interesting image. And I'm going to drop an image here that I did up at Seneca Lake a few years back, and I know I showed you this image. We actually were taking pictures of the lake, and we had sparklers. It was the middle of the summer, and the kids actually wrote Lake 2000. I'm not even sure what year it is. I'll when you see it on the image here. But yeah, so we had a lot of fun with this, and it was creative. They had a lot of fun doing it. It took us more than one try, but when you do something like this with like light painting or steel wool and things like that, it's a just fun, creative way to use long exposures.
So great shot. Thanks for sharing this one.
This is different. This is a lot longer than we usually do these videos, but
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cool to just sit here and talk about photography a little bit. We try to keep the videos, between 10 and 15 minutes long, but we enjoyed seeing all these images from all you guys, and it's interesting to see what, other people do and see other people's creativity.
Yep,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
So this next one is from our friend Anthony Hofgren, and this is dark ride photography is one of our favorite things in the world to do. And there are some shots that are kind of easy and some shots that are really hard. And this one is really hard. This is shot on test track in Epcot and Disney World, and if you've ever been on a ride, you know that this is the part where you basically are launched and you kind of go through that wall at the end and you go flying outside. It's a really tough shot to get, and the fact that he was able to capture this, capture the center element there with the doors with the icon on it, sharply and getting the motion on the sides. I've tried this shot I don't know however many times I've ridden the ride, which is probably 30 times. I've tried this shot probably 30 times, and I've gotten the shot right maybe once, maybe not as good as this one.
Yeah. So this is a very cool shot, and it's one of those things you have to have a slow shutter, and you actually have to hand hold the camera. So it's a tough shot to get, and this is just another reason why we like shooting in the amusement parks in Walt Disney World and Disneyland and places like that, because there's a lot of opportunities to be creative with your photography and learn. And it's going to speed up your progress as a photographer being in these environments.
Yeah, getting into these challenging situations and figuring out how to get the shot.
And testing your camera and pushing it to its limit, for
Right.
sure. So very cool shot.
Thanks.
Okay, Alan sent this one in, and it's the same thing. It's a Ferris wheel with a long exposure, but he did something kind of cool where if he would have just left the long exposure, it just would have been a spinning wheel. He actually panned a little bit in the middle of the shot and moved the camera, and what it does is it creates almost like a doubling effect.
Yeah, it's almost like a 3D effect. When I first saw it, I was like, how did he get this?
Right.
Then we read down and noticed it, and it's a very, very cool shot. Good job.
Yep.
So this is from our friend Michelle Luna. This is another great example of a daytime long exposure, but not too long. When you get a monorail shot like this, if you take a 1/500th of a second shot and freeze it in motion, it looks like there's a monorail just sitting on a track, and it's really not that interesting. But to get just that little bit of motion, to get just enough motion to get it to blur is really what you're looking for, really what you're trying to capture. So
Yeah.
something like this shows just enough motion, but it's not completely blurred through the image. You can still see what it is.
Right. So it was probably handheld, and it looks like it was just a fraction of a second, like just maybe I don't know, 1/5 of a second.
Yeah, probably a fifth of a second or a quarter of a second or
something like that. Yeah. So really nice job, Michelle.
Good job. All right, we love shooting waterfalls, and this is the first waterfall we've come to in this video. This is from Michael. Great job on this. Even though the waterfall is just in a little corner of the shot, you can still see the motion makes the picture really kind of unique.
Yeah, so you have to use a long exposure here. And the only thing with a shot like this that you might want to be careful with is you don't want to overexpose too much. And that's why we use neutral density filters. But if you don't have one, you don't have one sometimes. The tree of life here is really the focus of the image, but the fact that the water is softened on the left side there is perfect, because otherwise it's going to be like frozen droplets, and this is also just showing a little bit of motion. It's not the center of the picture, but it adds a little nice element to it.
Right, great job.
Yeah. So Steve sent this one in, and anytime you can capture lightning, it's pretty cool, because it's not as hard as you think it is to actually capture. So a shot like this, what I would do, now there are triggers that you can use, but if you don't have that kind of equipment and you just want to kind of catch it with your camera, you need a tripod, or you need your camera to be stationary somewhere. But you'll basically want to do as long of an exposure as you can, and it's okay if your exposure is dark, because the lightning is going to really light it up.
Yeah, you basically want to what I've set up before and just taken multiple like 5-minute long exposures one after the other. And if you're shooting into a relatively dark area, you're not going to get anything overexposed, just hoping to capture that lightning strike. And sometimes you can capture more than one like this. So it takes a tripod, usually a cable release, a camera, and some bravery to get out there and shoot in a storm.
Yeah, but a very cool image. And if you've never done this, next time it's a stormy night and you're in an open space, get out there with the camera and see if you can capture this. It's a fun shot to try to get.
But if you get hurt, we didn't tell you.
Okay, thanks.
This is from Brian from Disney Photographish. Photographish, right?
I'll say it.
Okay.
All right, this next one is from Brian from Disney Photographish, and he sent this image in. And if you don't look close, you might be like, well, where's the motion in here? If you look closely, you might see that there's an actual loop in the middle of that for a roller coaster, and inside that loop, the roller coaster is actually going through the loop. So it's a very cool image.
Yeah, he caught it at the perfect moment, completely upside down. I guess he didn't have a tripod. Maybe he did. He didn't want to take the tripod out, but he shot this handheld at 1/8 of a second, which was really just enough to capture the motion blur of the roller coaster car as it went around.
Yeah, so really cool shot, Brian. Thanks for sharing it with us. So Harold sent this one in, and he captured some motion of the waves actually crashing against the rocks on the shore. And it's a cool image. You got the water going through the air, and it shows a little bit of the motion as the water's coming into the shoreline there.
Yeah, it's a really great shot. You can almost feel the wave hitting the rocks right there, and everything else in the sky in the background, the framing, all the elements here, really well done.
Right time of day, the sun looks like it just had set, or it's setting, or it's sunrise, or something like that. So nice shot, Harold. So the next two shots are from Arnold and from Vinny, and they both submitted waterfall shots. And if you've been following along, we love shooting waterfalls. It's one of those things that we really enjoy. And both of these are great examples of how you can capture water in motion. And waterfalls are one of those things that you can really practice your long exposures. Typically, I would say you need a tripod, a neutral density filter during the day for sure. But if you happen to catch it at the right time of day, early morning, late in the afternoon, you might be able to get away with a 1 or 2 second exposure, and you can create images like this.
Yeah, so you basically need, for shorter waterfalls is a shorter exposure, maybe even as short as 1/10 of a second or 1/4 of a second. For the really big waterfalls where water has to fall a long way, you want to get a longer exposure, even 3-4 seconds long. It's just fun. When you find a waterfall that looks nice and you can compose it and get a nice framing and get a good image, it's so much fun just to stay out there and try all different things, try all different angles, try all different exposure lengths, and really you be creative and try something new.
Yeah, so thanks for the shots, guys.
All right, so this one is from Joel McCune at Next Stop Mickey. This is an iconic place. It's become an iconic shot now. The Millennium Falcon in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland and Disney World. And it looks like he took it to the next level by adding something, probably one of those $200 or $300 lightsabers that you get when you go there, and decided to actually incorporate that into the image and had somebody, hopefully a family member or a friend, waving it around for him while he got this shot. Great idea, great, things like this are really great. He had a great idea and actually added something new and unique to an image that's become really, very
Popular.
Yeah. Something that you've seen shot a million times. He added something very special to it.
Yeah, so, basically just some light painting again, just moving it around in a unique way and created like a star pattern here. So, very cool image. Now, we're going to have another image from Joel here, but we're saving that for the end because it's like, it's the shot. So, hang on, we're going to be the last shot in Joel's. I'm giving it away a little bit here, but it's the bucket list shot that photographers would like to get. All right, so hang on. Here's the next one.
All right, so this is our friend Patrick, Disney by Patrick, and this is from Disney World. This is the Dumbo ride in Disney World at night, taken with a wide-angle lens, and really it's. Sometimes you just set up your camera and you can capture motion. You can take a long exposure, 2 seconds, 3 seconds long, and capture motion. There's a difference between just doing that, just setting it up and getting a long exposure, and actually getting a great shot and actually framing and composing well. And he did such a great job here of using the ultra wide angle, using a long exposure, and getting the little bit of a tilt to it, and really just framing this perfectly to get such a great shot.
Yeah, really, really nice job. And the editing's good. Everything about this image just works. So thanks for that one, Patrick. So this one's a little different. This is actually a SpaceX launch, and this one is from our friend Ernie. And if you want to read about this, because this shot took a lot of planning, and you can go to his Instagram page and check it out, because he's got a big, explanation of what he did. But it took a lot of planning to take this shot, and you were saying that sometimes it's worth it to do all that kind of planning.
Yeah, I definitely go check it out. Definitely go to his Instagram and check out what he did to get this shot. I love planning. I love stories about planning and getting a shot, whether it's a success or a failure. In this shot, it was a great success. But basically, he had to do a lot of work to get the angle, to get the position, to get the timing and everything just right.
Yeah, researching, calling people that know about the launch. I mean, he really went the extra mile to get himself in the right spot to be successful in getting that shot. And sometimes that's more important than the settings. It's knowing where to be and when to take the shot.
Right, and he nailed it, and he got the great shot, and great job.
Yeah, nice shot, Arnie. WWD Parks. And it's an interesting shot again, where you have some motion on the right side of the image, and you have something stationary like a focal point on the left-hand side, and you also have the moon in the shot. So we just thought it was a really great way to show some motion on just a portion of the image, not really the focal point, but just kind of coming through it.
Right. Yeah, we love the monorail when it's only moving a little bit. We love the monorail when it's streaking completely through the image. This is a great job of composition. The color looks great. The editing is great. Just really fun shot.
Yeah. Now, if you're not involved in the Disney photography world, this is going to look like nothing to you. But for the photography that we kind of do, this is one of those shots that a lot of photographers try to get, and they nailed it in this one.
Yeah, good shot.
Okay, so this next shot is one of those shots for us as Disney photographers. This is the one that you hope you get, and whatever genre of photography that you're into. Let's say you're a cityscape shooter, or you shoot landscape photography. If you can capture what you want and then get the added element of a bolt of lightning to happen at the same time, that is the win. That is the big shot.
It's one thing to get a bolt of lightning out in an open field somewhere when you're chasing a storm. It's another thing to have your composition setup and be shooting something that is standalone spectacular, and then to get the lightning in it, in addition, it's icing on the cake, I guess. But it's just a fantastic
Yeah,
thing.
so Joel nailed it here. I mean, he was shooting the fireworks in Walt Disney World, and he happened to get lucky that there was a thunderstorm right behind the castle in this shot, which is, it just adds such a different element to it. And, the exposure's perfect on everything. And if you've ever shot lightning, it can be very bright. So, he's just got everything perfect in this image. He nailed the exposure, the timing, just everything about it. It's a perfect shot.
So awesome job, great job, Joel.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've captured lightning in different situations, and one of my favorite images that I caught last year was that camping shot that
Yeah,
I've
the
shown
camper
before.
with the fire.
Yeah, I got the fire going. My wife was hanging, and I got the lightning off in the background, and it was just one of those shots. Like, oh my God, I may never get a shot like that again. And
Right.
so these are the ones that, as a photographer, and if you're getting into this or you're a photographer, that sometimes you just get that once in a lifetime shot that maybe you're not going to get again. So
Yeah.
really, really good job.
Yeah, as photographers, we know what his reaction was when he saw that he got the shot.
Yeah, so very cool shot. All right, so that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I mean, a lot of images and a lot of talking by us, but something different. And let us know in the comments if you liked it. Maybe some other ideas for other things that we could talk about. Maybe there's some photography techniques that you want to learn about. So by seeing other people's portraits or landscape images or whatever it might be, you can talk about in the comments.
Yeah, so this was a lot of fun. Like I said, if we didn't get to your picture, if you sent one in, we apologize. We didn't overlook anybody. We tried not to, but we had a lot of pictures to get to.
Yeah, we didn't want this video to be like an hour long, so it's already a lot longer than we usually do. Okay, so in this corner, we're going to put a video about how to shoot fireworks. We talked about fireworks in this video, and it's something you might want to learn. We have all the settings and everything you need to know.
And down in my corner over here, we're going to have a video about shooting lightning, capturing lightning, which we've talked about here also. So it's a lot of fun to do. Watch these videos. We have a lot of other videos about motion, waterfalls, things like that. Check those out also.
Okay, thanks. We'll see you in the next video.